Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti for the best conversations in AEW, WWE, NXT, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Make sure you subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. So another Wednesday night is in the books with two very good shows here from AEW Dynamite and NXT on the USA Network. We're going to do quick reviews of those and also talk about the ratings because I know a lot of people will be talking about them as both hit some pretty big drops in both the ratings and in the viewership. But let's talk about the shows themselves. Like I said, they were both very good shows. And we'll start with AEW Dynamite. To me, AEW Dynamite this week was a very WWE-esque type show where we got a contract signing, we got crossover with the Ricky and Morty thing, we got nostalgia acts with the Rock and Roll Express, we got pre-produced packages like we saw with Brandy and Awesome Kong, we got some showcase matches, we got a promo session, and it's just so weird seeing a WWE type show on AEW. But the thing is, AEW did a much better job at doing a WWE type show than WWE does on Raw and SmackDown. It was, a way that, if you're a WWE fan and you're just so frustrated with what WWE does, you watch this episode of Dynamite and you're like, if AEW could do it, how could WWE not do it week in and week out? But on the show, we got Hangman Page beating Sammy Guevara in a very good opening match. Hikaru Shida making her AEW debut and probably, in my opinion, the best women's match so far in AEW against Shanna. First time I've seen her. And I guess she had some experience in Stardom, a former high-speed champion. She's called the favorite from Portugal or something along that. If I got the nickname wrong, I apologize. But she looked really good. Hikaru Shida looks good. I mean, to me, Hikaru Shida is probably the best Joshi that AEW has. I know Riho's getting the push right now as the AEW champion, but I wouldn't be surprised if at Full Gear we get Hikaru Shida versus Riho in a rematch that will be for the AEW Women's Championship. We also got the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy winning in an enhancement match against John Silver, Alex Reynolds, and QT Marshall. This was a fun match, and it was a comedy match like we see in WWE where they do a Halloween or a holiday themed match. In this case, this was the Halloween theme match with the Ricky and Morty crossover. Trent dressed like Ricky and Chucky T dressed like Morty. And then you also had Orange Cassidy in a lab coat, which he took off and became Orange Cassidy later on in the show. And everyone is eating up Orange Cassidy. He is super over right now. And say what you want about the gimmick, I'm not a big fan of it, as I've said in the past. My brother, who's usually on this show, who's not here tonight, he says the same thing. He's not a big fan of the gimmick, but it's working right now. So there's really, if it works, keep running with it. We also got the Elite winning in their 6-man match, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks beating the Hybrid 2 and Helico and Jack Evans with Kip Sabian. This was a solid match, a solid 6-man tag team match. A little chaotic because, again, with AEW and not knowing who the legal man is, a lot of moving parts, fast pace. The crowd loves it. Some of the traditionalists I've seen on social media are saying, it's hard to follow these matches without knowing who the legal man is and the tags, and the referee's not really enforcing rules. It's frustrating, but I think we're starting to get a little bit of improvement in these matches, especially with this last match where we saw SCU become the first AEW tag team champions as they beat the Lucha Brothers. I thought that was a solid match. And at the end of the day, we know the finish, I think, was a little rushed because of the TV time that was left. So there could have been more that was planned for this match, but they kind of had to finish before the satellite window dropped and they were not going to have the pin on air. Obviously, Scorpio Sky is hugely over with the crowd right now. SCU is hugely over. I think this is a good move. interested to see who ends up being the first number one contenders for the AEW Tag Team Championship match from here. We did see Private Party out in the front row. We saw a backstage scene where the Dark Order were watching the match from a monitor, and it wasn't that weird camera angle that WWE loves to do. It actually looked like they were looking at a TV and not just standing in front of a camera with a weird angle. It looks uncomfortable to me, but and then we also had these awesome segments that I want to talk about here. So first I want to talk about the contract signing. The contract signing was awesome between Cody Rhodes and Chris Jericho, and everything leading up to the contract signing was awesome. So we open up the show with Tony Schiavone at the airport waiting for Cody Rhodes to come out of the airplane. Dustin Rhodes comes out as well. This was a lot like Starrcade 1993. And at Starrcade 1993, for those that don't know, Ric Flair had a big match that at that time, the story was that was the biggest match of his career, going up for the world championship against Vader. And that was in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Ric Flair lives. So from his house to the arena, they follow him in the limousine. And instead of Tony Schiavone talking to him in the limo, it was Mean Gene Okerlund. So it was a very nice tip of the hat to that whole thing. And I'm sure a lot of people also got that vibe as well. For those that remember that 1993 Starrcade, and if you do, let me know in the comments. We get to the actual contract signing itself, and I'm sure a lot of people were worried how this was going to be planned out, because we see it all the time in WWE where there's the contract signs and then either the table gets flipped or someone gets powerbombed through the table, or there's a pull apart brawl. It's always the same thing with those contract signings. But Jericho actually mentions this and says, he shakes the table, hinting that he's going to flip it over, but doesn't. Says that, you know what? We're professionals. I am Le Champion. You are the challenger. Let's just have a good old fashioned contract sign. So they sign the contract, shake hands. And then we get Sammy Guevara coming out on, in the parking lot with his phone cam. And behind him is Jake Hager beating up Dustin Rhodes. The Inner Circle getting more heat for whatever antics that they do. And this is great. A great heel faction doing heelish things and fans booing them for it. This is what we want. So that match has even a bigger story, because we know Jericho's going to bring the Inner Circle. Does Cody bring the Nightmare Family out there to even the odds? And Dustin Rhodes, MJF, DDP, maybe the Bucks, who knows? But I'm excited for that match, and this contract signing just made me even more excited for that match. Also, something that WWE does a lot is bring back nostalgia acts, whether that's Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, The Undertaker. I could go on and on and on. And what ends up happening is the nostalgia act stands tall, and the person that's involved in that segment actually looks weaker. Most recently with The Rock and Baron Corbin, the whole STD chant. Baron Corbin didn't really benefit from that. We saw the Revival be a part of DX at, the Raw 25 show. It happens all the time where the nostalgia acts stand tall instead of helping the younger guys get some credibility and do something with this. AEW, on the other hand, they take the Rock and Roll Express, who are supposed to be presenting the AEW Tag Team Championships, but then out come Santana and Ortiz and put them through, beat them up on the stage, put them through the stage, and then the Young Bucks come out for the save, help that storyline. So it makes some great heat for Santana and Ortiz, and people just hate them. And later on in the night, we saw Santana and Ortiz beat up the Young Bucks after their match. So another match that they're just progressing storylines, and they know exactly what they're doing, and the crowd is eating it up. I'm excited for it. I can't wait for these matches. Obviously, the other thing that we got to talk about is Jon Moxley's promo. So at the beginning of the show as well, we got a closed door conversation between Jon Moxley and Tony Khan. And in that conversation, it is known to Jon Moxley that the match between him and Kenny Omega will be now unsanctioned, lights out match, so it won't go against the win and loss records. And obviously this makes Jon Moxley mad because if he does beat the Best Bout Machine, it's like no one is going to remember. It's not going to be in the record books. It's not going to help his win-loss to help him, with whatever it is. It's just, as he even said, we're just going to pretend it never happened, which we saw a lot in WWE. Things happen and then we're just supposed to forget it ever happened. I felt this promo was very Stone Cold-esque, and I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. Very anti-authoritative. I'm just going to do what I do, beat to my own drum, and beat everyone's ass that gets in my way. I loved it. It felt real. It felt genuine. It didn't feel scripted. It's just like, as a WWE fan, and I don't want to keep trashing them, but this is the stuff that, like, you had this guy, you had this character, but instead you had to make it a corporate cookie cutter way, and it didn't quite flow in WWE. But here he is in AEW, and he is just unbelievable. And the promos have been top notch, including this one. So, I mean, this was a very, very good show, in my opinion. Maybe even the best show that AEW has put on. And yes, it was a WWE-esque show, in my opinion. A lot of people are saying it gave vibes of WCW and NWO. But either way, it was a good show. And it's like, you know what? Raw and SmackDown, this is what your show should look like. Because you do these things, and the startup company is making them look better than you. And that's just my opinion on that. Now let's go to NXT. They had a very good show themselves. We saw Io Shirai and Candice LeRae open up the show with a very, very good opening match. And the women's division has looked very strong since coming on to the USA Network. And we'll talk about that a little later on. Bronson Reed defeated Shane Thorne in a really stiff match. I like Bronson Reed. He's got a good look to him. Big dude. Can go off the top rope, as we saw with the finish with the splash onto Shane Thorne. Those exchange of chops was, there were some loud, hard chops there. And I think there's a bright future for both these guys. But Bronson Reed, I say he's going to be a big future here with NXT. So then we had the women's tag team championship match where the Kabuki Warriors retained thanks to the green mist from Asuka over Tegan Nox and Dakota Kai team kick. Now, one thing that I will say WWE does better than AEW right now, and I've kind of alluded to this already, is how they structure their tag team matches. AEW does have good tag team matches, but they're a little chaotic and hard to follow at times for my personal taste. In this case, it was slow, it was methodical, and there was some really good storytelling here where Asuka was going after Dakota Kai's stronger knee for the majority of the match and preventing her to tag in Tegan Nox. I mean, this went on for like a good 5-10 minutes before finally Tegan Nox comes in for the hot tag. And again, Asuka goes and attacks the knees of Tegan Nox because she had both her knees repaired. This was just awesome. This was an awesome match. Obviously, the Kabuki Warriors win, so finally, we see the women tag team champions win a match instead of just them jobbing out to whoever it is in singles matches and to non-title matches. At least it gives them a good, solid win. Cameron Grimes beats Tyler Bate in a pretty solid match as well. I like Cameron Grimes. I like Tyler Bate. This was a good match, like I said. And I think the ending protected Tyler Bate in a losing effort because he dominated the majority of the match. But then Killian Dane comes in, doesn't touch him until after the match. But when Tyler Bate walks back into the ring, Cameron Grimes is there for his quick double stomp that he's been squashing people with. Hits that quick 1, 2, 3. So Grimes gets a big win over Bate, a former United Kingdom champion. And Tyler Bate's protected, gets beat up afterwards by Killian Dane. So it looks like we're going to see something later on, either on a future episode of NXT, or this could set up a match for War Games, which is going to be happening in a month from now. And of course, the ending of the show, we got a tag team match where Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish defeated the tag team of Keith Lee and Matt Riddle, thanks to some interference from Roddy Strong and Adam Cole. And then afterwards, Tommaso Ciampa comes out for the save and goes onto the mic and says, Goldie, you're going to have to wait. Daddy's going to war. So we're hinting at the potential War Games match, which it looks like we're going to get Adam Cole, O'Reilly, Fish, Strong, Undisputed Era going up against the foursome of Tommaso Ciampa, Keith Lee, Matt Riddle, and I would say either Dominik Dijakovic or Velveteen Dream. Either one of them could be a part of this. If they do add the fifths and have it 5-on-5 War Games, Finn Balor obviously would be on one side, Johnny Gargano would be on the other. And I do want to talk about that promo that Finn Balor mentioned. This was another good promo. This is something where on the main roster, you just can't have promos like this because of how things are just so corporately structured and, so cookie cutter. But he comes here to NXT and you could just tell the freedom that they get in NXT that they just weren't getting on Raw or SmackDown. And basically the summary of it is he is treating this not as a demotion to NXT. He's looking to beat the best, go after those that are considered the best. And obviously the first person is Johnny Gargano, who is the heart of NXT. So if he could beat Johnny Gargano, then obviously that's one step closer to beating everyone else that's considered the best. So does this lead to a match at War Games? I would think so. But yeah, this was a solid promo and I'm liking this heel Balor. I'm really liking it. And obviously those that follow New Japan Pro Wrestling could probably remember his days as Prince Devitt and the leader of the Bullet Club. So I think we're getting hints of that in NXT. And he even alluded to it in at Backstage earlier this week where he said that the Prince is back. So I'm liking it. Absolutely liking it. Which show is better? I'm going to give the edge to AEW just because I think the flow of the show was a little bit better. I think the matches were a little bit better. Obviously, the angle with the contract signing angle was really good and really solidly executed. The Moxley promo was awesome. A little bit better than Balor's promo, although Balor's promo was very, very good. And yeah, that's what I think. AEW was the better show. So let me know in the comments which show you thought was better. I'll put a poll above my head as well. Which show you thought was better between AEW Dynamite and NXT. But before we close this show up, the ratings. Of course, everybody wants to talk about these ratings. They definitely took a hit because, here in America, we have this sport called baseball, the World Series, Game 7. Game 7 is huge in sports because it's in WrestleMania terms, it's the main event of WrestleMania or closing out the Tokyo Dome in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's win or go home. So obviously people are watching that whether or not they have a dog in the fight. The Houston Astros, Washington Nationals drew 21 million people Wednesday night, which is huge, absolutely huge. And obviously this took a hit, and not just AEW and NXT, but just cable as a whole took a hit. For those that don't know, the ratings for AEW this week dropped from 0.5 last week to 0.33 in the 18 to 49 demographic. Huge drop. And they also dropped in viewership, going from just under 1 million last week to 759,000 this week. NXT, they dropped from 0.21 to 0.18 in the 18 to 49 demographic, and they dropped from about 716,000 to 580,000. So the World Series definitely played a role in both their rating drop and their viewership drop. And for those that, saw the top shows ratings for cable, you would see that American Horror Stories and South Park were the top rated cable shows last night. They did better than the NBA. They did better than AEW. They did better than any other cable show. But they were on at 10 p.m. So obviously, those that were watching between the hours of 8 and 10 were watching the World Series. So while these ratings are not good, I think both shows will bounce back and stabilize to what they were the weeks before, where NXT will probably be in that 0.20 range with the viewership at around 725,000 to 800,000. And for AEW, next week's the go-home show to Full Gear. So I expect a jump in the ratings, obviously. They've been around that 0.45 range since the second week, so I think they get back to that stable number with no World Series to worry about. The NBA might take some viewers, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a hit. And they'll be around that 850,000 to 1 million next week. So this was a fun week. And unfortunately, because World Series Game 7 was there, a lot of people decided to DVR the shows and watch them afterwards, and it shows in the ratings. So let me know what you think about both shows in the comments below. Don't forget to share this all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. And for the best conversations in AEW, WWE, NXT, and New Japan Pro Wrestling, subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. My name is Michael Valenti, and thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.